I think religion is, especially for people who grew up in church, and I think it's one of the things that inoculates us with just enough of Jesus to be satisfied and not realize that there's more. And I think that's the deception of religion. If we do enough for him, then he'll be happy with us. And the reality is that because of Jesus, because of what Jesus has done, because of us being the righteousness of Christ, because of the cross and the resurrection, there's nothing that I can do to make him love me more, right? And when I know that he loves me, even when I go through seasons of disappointment or fear or anxiety or anything like that, I know that he still desires me. He still desires a relationship with me, which blows my mind.
Folks, thanks for joining us again today, for there is more. There is more. We love hearing the stories, and that's what this is all about, from folks who are known in one way. They're known by street address, degrees, name, but there's more to who they really are that you wouldn't know unless we had a chance for them to share it with us. Today, it's my privilege and joy to welcome Micah Fisher to There Is More this
Yes,
afternoon.
sir.
And we just, we are grateful that you and Tina and your family are here in San Antonio with us. Micah is actually our worship pastor here at Alamo City, and has joined us within the last few months. And it's been exciting to see what all is developing, and looking forward to the future.
Yeah.
Enjoying the present, looking
Come
forward
on.
to the future.
Well, thank you,
Talk
Pastor.
to us about that. And are you a San Antonio native? Where are you
So
from?
we've been in San Antonio for about 15 years. It's about 15 minutes, maybe no, I think it was Texas for 15,
Yeah.
and San Antonio for about 12,
Okay.
maybe a little bit more. So,
Okay.
yeah, love San Antonio. But weren't really sure at first when we first got here. It's kind of a wild story how I ended up being in Texas. I was born in Oregon. My dad was a pastor in the Montana area. Yes, sir.
Wow.
And then when I was about 13 years old, we ended up moving cross country to Georgia. Lived in Georgia for about 10 years, and then finally landed in Texas. Probably in my mid 20s, we ended up landing in Texas.
Mm-hmm. So you had left your original family by then, or
Yes,
were
sir.
they all here? They moved too?
Oh, most of my family moved to Texas when I moved to Texas. So it was about 2008, I believe, is when most of my family moved to the Texas area. My mom and dad, my older sister, and my younger brother all moved to the Texas area.
Yeah. All right. And so you obviously now are heavily involved in music, worship, that sort of thing.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming it hadn't always been that way.
No. So I felt called to ministry. It was probably when I was about 16. I was at an Acquire the Fire conference. It was a Ron Luce, I think it was the guy who ended up leading that. But it was there that I felt the call of God on my life. Like when I was younger, my parents would always say, "We really feel like God has a call on your life." And my mom would say things like, "When you were a baby, I just felt like the Lord, had a destiny on your life." And I was like, "What does that mean?" When I was young. But then in high school, felt like I gave my life to that call in ministry, and I really didn't know what that looked like when I first started, because I just loved people and loved Jesus and loved people, and I wanted them to experience His goodness. And music kind of didn't have really anything to do with that at that first moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So high school, that was when there was a connection.
Yes, sir.
There, and that served to give direction for other choices, other
Yeah.
steps. So where were you when that happened? Was that?
So we were in the Atlanta, Georgia area,
Okay.
South Atlanta,
Yeah.
and we were there. My dad was an associate pastor at a church in a town called Peachtree City, and we were going to a youth group at the church, and yeah, that's when we went to that conference, and then I ended up becoming interested in playing the guitar, really just because it felt like it was cool, I guess, at the time. Mostly probably because I had a youth pastor who led and played and sang, and I just was drawn to it. It was as I think back, I was probably like 16 or 17, and as I look back and recall, I just was drawn to it. It never was an aspiration to be anything more than just playing and singing, because I just loved to play and sing. I knew God had called me to ministry, and so ended up going into a ministry school in Atlanta that was a part of a church down there, and it's kind of like an internship, Bible college internship kind of a thing. And I remember trying to figure out my place in what the Lord had called me to do. When you're told from a young age that God has big plans for you, God has a great call in your life, it's when you're 19 trying to navigate what that looks like, and maybe wrap your roundabout in understanding what that a great thing for the Lord looks like. So I would use music. I remember going out to the soccer field in the evenings and just taking my guitar and just playing and singing, and really just using music as an avenue to converse with the Lord. And maybe as a 19-year-old kind of have those teenage angst moments.
But by yourself?
Yes, sir.
Doing that by yourself?
Yes, sir. Just in the middle of the night, going out on the soccer field, and probably, as a young creative, not really realizing I was a creative, which I think that we're all creative. I think some of us maybe are a little bit more wild in that. But I remember that was such a pivotal time for me. It was, I think, where I learned how to communicate my heart with the Lord, and realize that it was okay that I wasn't okay, or I didn't understand something. And I would take those moments to the Lord in prayer and communication. And I learned him. It was in that, like, because you grow up in church and you get an idea of who the Lord is, most of the time based on maybe your parents or or the church that you're around or your friend group. But it's when it becomes personal, and like the Lord, you and the Lord actually begin to have, no, this is my Lord, this is my God, this is the relationship that I have with the Lord, and like this is who He is and how He's come through in my dark nights of the soul, or things like that. So I remember looking back, one of our pastors came up and was like, "So what do you feel called to?" I was like, "I don't know. I just feel like I feel like the call of God is on my life. I love the Lord. I love people, but I don't really know what that looks like." So I ended up going into kids ministry for about 3.5, 4 years, all the while playing music, doing music, but really not thinking that I was that great. How it is, like you're your own worst critic. And I remember I loved worshiping. I loved singing. I loved pouring my heart out to the Lord like that.
Anybody else around or not?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would speak into that, just because that's a lot like, we read the Psalms, we read David's songs. Many of them were just his songs, and I believe that there were many of them that were written by him when it was just him and the Lord. It's just, it wasn't for the performance before a crowd. And that can just cut right down through to determine the motivation.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? Am I doing this to impress people, get the attaboys from people, or is it primarily I just want to go this way with it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that way, regardless of the size of the crowd, you're going to still do what you do because you love it this way. You want him to be blessed, encouraged, and you're responding to that. I just had to pitch that in.
Yes, sir.
I think that's a significant indicator of the essential calling, but it's also the motivation as to why do you do it? Is it primarily this way, or is it primarily this way?
Yeah. I think that's one of the things I learned. I learned young. I remember going to it was a worship night in Atlanta, and there was a worship leader named Jeff Dio who was a part of a band called Sonic Flood, and he said, as he was kind of, those intermission moments when he was kind of exhorting, he said something like this. He's like, to all those who are worshipers, or all those who want to lead worship, he's like, I want to encourage you. He said that you could never take somebody someplace that you've never been. And that had stuck with me. Even in the moments where I never thought worship was going to be something that I was ever going to do. I really didn't think that I was that great at it. For me, worship was, it was a means to knowing the Lord. It was the way that I had relationship with him. I guess it was the easiest way for me to actually be honest with the Lord in those moments. I think sometimes for me, like I get too much in my head, or maybe I feel an emotion or a feeling, but when I would sit down and worship and open up the Word and have a conversation with him, it was in those moments of musicality that I felt like his presence became manifest. And where his presence was there, it was like all the other noise that was going on in those moments just seemed to quiet down. And when you grow up like not feeling good enough for the call of God. Oops, sorry. When you grow up not feeling good enough for the call of God on your life. Because when I was younger, I remember, and my parents, they did it because they believed in me, but they were like, God's got great things for you. God's got great things for you. And I remember one night, it was probably 6 years ago, I was driving in, and I had felt like the Lord spoke something over me. And I was driving, and I was like, God, I can't do that. It doesn't seem fair. It almost seemed like the call that God was asking me to step into and to do was so much bigger than what I could carry. And in that moment, I almost was like mad at the Lord, because I was like, God, this is too much for me. And I remember the Holy Spirit whispering, he's like, I'm never asking you to be the one that carries all this. He's like, I'm just inviting you in to be a part of what I'm doing. And that's been something that's been a real, given me a lot of peace.
Yeah. Well, it's a mysterious thing many times in the ways that the Lord will work and make his direction known to us, and he's not going to always do that in the same way with people.
Yeah.
There's a very significant verse, I believe, in John, where Jesus will say, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." It's one of those pieces of equipment that we get when Jesus comes to live within us.
Yeah.
It's the ability to hear. We get a set of ears. We get receptors that we can hear. And whereas before, when it was just about religion, being in a place and going through rituals, it could be not really understood, not really felt, not really known. But there is something that happens, Michael, when we open our hearts to the Lord and He comes to live within us, and we get the ability to hear. And it's different than the sound of voices of men. Sometimes the Lord can use the voice of a man or woman to speak what is His word to us, but when we know that He is the one, somehow it's that familiar other world voice to our hearts, and you're changed. You're just, you're changed. We don't know what all the steps are going to be in that direction, but if that is what He has said, we will. There's something in us that will want to follow.
Yeah.
I've been asked, over the years, well, when were you called to be a pastor? Which I say, I was never called to be a pastor. What I believe the Lord, I sense the Lord to my heart. Follow me.
Yeah.
Follow me. Well, as I've tried to follow Him, it's ended me up, standing behind a pulpit or whatever. But that's the point. It's not so much the vocation as it is the sense of relationship with Him.
I totally get that. Have you ever seen that picture of the turtle on top of a fence post? And it's I think the comment is, that your ability wasn't what got you somewhere.
Yeah.
And I totally identify with that, because I'm like, I wanted God to have my yes, and whatever that looked like, because I just love Him.
Yeah.
Just love Him.
Yeah.
Like even when you go through life, and you go through things with family and kids and disappointments and heartbreaks. And I remember it was just last week. I was hanging out with my wife Tina, and I don't even know how the conversation got brought up, but I was just like, I'm frustrated about this or that. But I was like, God, I just love you. I don't care if I'm frustrated. I don't care if this doesn't go the way I want it to. And if it doesn't happen the way I want it to, I'm like, I'm just glad that you're here and that He's with us. And that his nearness, his presence, his present presence it's the most treasured thing, I think, to me.
Yeah. Well, and again, back to David, it was, he would just talk about how my heart thirsts for you, as the deer pants for the water brook, or in the heat of summer. My heart thirsts for you. I think that is one of the most important aspects of what His life within us and our relationship with us to be, that we want to be with Him. We want to sense His presence. And I find myself often at this stage in my life saying such things as, and I think I said it even Sunday, if we are coming into a building called a church, and we go through the things that we would go through and do in church, but we never have a sense of His presence, why did we come in the first place? It isn't about the Psalms. I love the Psalms. It isn't about the preacher, but it is about somewhere in all that, the sense of the presence of Jesus. And that is where what I find, I really believe people aching for, longing for. That's why there can be such a desertion of traditional religion.
Yeah.
Of just places and buildings and form and so forth. There's maybe weary of that, not wanting that, not having grown up in it maybe, but just realizing there's nothing here.
Yeah.
There is something wonderfully different when there is the sense of the Lord's presence. And he says, I will, two or three gather together in my name, I'll be in the middle of the circle. Well, so why are Christians gathering? Why do we gather? If we're gathering for him and to him and believing that when we gather he will meet with us, then that's completely different than just showing up on a Sunday to check a box.
Yeah.
And I love seeing that and feeling that happen. And I also believe that there is a breaking down of the control of church structures, so-called church structures that have been keeping ones who would know the Lord, love the Lord, desire to go further with him, keeping them in prison from really pursuing him.
Yeah.
And so we see all kinds of things popping up in restaurants where guys are meeting, or in groups in different, maybe homes or strange settings, but there's the sense of the Lord's presence in there. And I feel that, I sense that when you lead worship, I sense that you're not talking about somebody you don't know. You're not singing about somebody you don't know, that there's a desire to know him.
Yes, sir.
That I may know him and the power of his resurrection, fellowship of his suffering. Yeah.
Well, and that's the invitation that Jesus gives us. And that's the prayer that he prayed in John 17. He said, Father, I want them to know me.
Yeah.
I want them to be in a relationship like we're in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And if that's the invitation, I think what happens is we don't think that we're invited to the table. I think that's what religion does, is it says, you don't have a seat at this table. Well, this is your table over here. And if you do enough, maybe he'll like you,
Yeah.
But the invitation is, come taste and see how the goodness of the Lord is. And I think religion is, especially for people who grew up in church, and I think it's one of the things that inoculates us with just enough of Jesus to be satisfied and not realize that there's more. And I think that's the deception of religion. If we do enough for him, then he'll be happy with us. And the reality is that because of Jesus, because of what Jesus has done, because of us being the righteousness of Christ, because of the cross and the resurrection, there's nothing that I can do to make him love me more, right? And when I know that he loves me, even when I go through seasons of disappointment or fear or anxiety or anything like that, I know that he still desires me. He still desires a relationship with me, which blows my mind. Because the more I hang out with, I think that this is the thing I say. I'm like, God, the older I get, the more I realize how just desperately I need him. And I'm like, God, you still love me after all the times where I've said I was going to do something and I didn't, or after all the times where I say, God, I'm so sorry. But then I go back to the things that are so easily that beset us. But he still desires a relationship, even after so many times that I've just blown it. And he still wants me as his friend, which is so just like to me, that's the thing that keeps me coming back to his presence and being like, God, I still can't believe I'm invited to the table, after all the moments of like frustration or disappointment or anger. Oh,
yeah.
I'm just glad. I feel like I'm the nerd at the prom. I'm just glad to be here. So people who say, "Oh, you're so anointed. You're so this and that." I'm like, "Thank you, but you don't live here."
Who are you talking about?
Who are you talking about? I just feel so honored that I get to do what I do, because I really identify with Paul where he says, I Paul the chief of sinners. And I'm like, if it wasn't for Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for him, I'm like,
Okay, so you and Tina and your little ones packed up and left Tampa because you felt like you heard the Lord
yeah,
say.
yeah,
Could you talk a little bit about that?
absolutely. Um, that move was a lot easier than the move that we made from San Antonio to Austin. I'll come back to Tampa. Um, we worked at a great church here in San Antonio. We worked at Community Bible Church. We were there for about just under 5 years. And in 2019, end of 2019, felt like the Lord told us to move up to Austin. And I was like, God, why? Why do we need to move up to Austin? He was like, I'll tell you when you get there.
And this was not with a job
This was
assignment or
not
a
with a
job
job
offer.
assignment. There was nothing up there.
Yeah.
There was no opportunity for income. And we were at Community Bible Church. We were making good money, had great influence. I would go to HEB and people would stop me and say, hey, you're from CBC, right? Oh, I love your worship. Um, and the Lord was like, no, I want you to pack up. And I was like, God, why? I was like, I have 3 kids. I have a wife. Like there's nothing there. And I remember one time praying and belly aching and going, God, there's no opportunity. And I felt the Holy Spirit put his hands on my face and he's like, I will provide for you. He's like, I said it, I meant it, you'll see it. And so it was that moment that gave me the faith. Tina was all about it. She's like, let's go. I feel like God's in this. And I was the one that was dragging my feet because I was the provider.
First? Who heard first, you or Tina, or both of you at the same time?
I think it was me. It was me. And
was this audible? Was this a handwritten note? Was this?
oh man, it was just, now I'm having to think about it again, looking back. It was the Lord started doing something in Tina and I, and we just began to pray and fast. And we just began praying for God. We want to see revival. We want to see a move of God. We want to see you do something. And He'd put a dream in our hearts to purchase land and see, really to purchase land and have a chapel or something like that, and for that to be a place of prayer and worship. And we thought, well, maybe us moving up to Austin is that first step. And I think it was. Ended up moving up to Austin. We were there for about 2 years working in contract and interim worship locations, met a lot of really great, amazing people. And it's too long of a story for this moment here. Because I want to be able to get to Tampa. We were there for 2 years. God did a lot of really amazing things in our hearts. And then out of left field, I felt like the Lord said, I want you to put out a wide net. I want you to go back to the church. And so we ended up putting out our resume and ended up using a couple of different high profile church headhunter places. And I remember having 35 interviews and 35 interviews talking about different church jobs. Now we were looking for different church jobs in Texas and Arizona and Florida and all around the country. And we would get so far in and they were like, man, we really like you, but you're 5 years down the road of where we want to be. Or that wasn't a culture fit or whatever. And I remember talking to one of the different personnel from this job place, and I was like, I feel like, am I even good at this? Like, I'm like, am I missing it? Am I not interviewing well? And the guy was like, bro, you're amazing. He's like, your profile, all this stuff. He's like, your abilities, you're so good. He's just like, the right place will come. And I was so discouraged because again, it was at the place of of like, I don't know what's going to happen next. But I think these small steps of taking a step of faith, following the Lord. Yeah, I remember another thing that the Lord said was, he's like, Austin is going to be like Elijah getting fed by the ravens. He's like, I'm going to provide for you in ways. And so he ended up providing in really great, amazing ways with different opportunities. We ended up having opportunities to lead worship um, at a bunch of different prayer houses and houses of prayer. And I remember I would just say yes to every opportunity that the Lord brought. And I remember most of those opportunities were for like 4 a.m. or 2 a.m, like 2-hour sets of just leading worship to an empty room. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. God, you're giving me this opportunity. I'll say yes. And it was so funny. But getting back to Tampa, we ended up landing a job in Tampa at a great church called the Crossing Church. They pulled me in to be their core worship pastor. I had like 3 different worship leaders underneath me, and I was over 3 campuses with a bunch of different volunteers, and it was really a great moment. I felt like the Lord did a lot of work in my heart, in Tina's heart, did a lot of really cool healing stuff in our emotions and in our spirits. And it was such a great time with the Lord. But one of the hard things, I think, with being away from family, again, most of our family, most of my wife, all of my wife's family, and most of my family are here in the San Antonio area. And so one of the hard things, especially for our oldest, was um, there was such a missing a longing to be back by family. And I remember praying. I was like, God, thank you for bringing us here. This is a great place. But I was like, Lord, if there's any way for us to be back. I don't even remember praying that prayer. And then I think it was a couple months later in November of 24 where I felt like the Lord said, it's time. And I was like, what? He's like, it's time to go back. He's like, and he reminded us of the dream of purchasing land and building a chapel. Really, our heart's desire was to create a space, have a space, and maybe even eventually having a place where we could just love on church staff members and pastors and pastors' families. And like, we don't even know what that quantifiably looks like, but it's just the desire that we felt like he's put on our hearts, because both Tina and I are pastors' kids. And I think that big audacious goal would be just to have a place where we could have nights of worship, and like a place that we could just say, God, this is yours. And I think that's the dream. That's the dream eventually. But really, a lot of it was to purchase land so that also we could have family come and live with us. And if they wanted to build a house or get some kind of a thing. So that was really the reason we felt like the Lord was bringing us back. Again, there was really no job. And so the reason why I told all the stories about Austin and leaving San Antonio for Austin was really to say that leap of faith wasn't as hard to believe for, because of how we left San Antonio for Austin and how the Lord provided for those 2 years. It really gave us an understanding of the faithfulness of the Lord. And it helped us to be able to build an altar of remembrance to say, well, the Lord has been faithful to us in this way. He's taken care of us. He didn't let us go without. He always provided for us. He had a position for us, and we didn't know that this opportunity was going to be the opportunity until we were able to sit down with you and Shirley, and it just felt like, this is the Lord. This is what he's doing. And it's so exciting to see what God is doing here at Alamo City.
That the statement that my sheep hear my voice, I know them, and they follow me. Well, the reason we can follow is because they've heard his voice, and that can be the challenge.
Mhm.
Is to there's something can be working in your heart,
Yeah.
a change, a need for a change, or desire for something different, or just a sense of confirmation. Do I
Yeah.
need to stay right where I am?
Yeah.
And I really do believe that the Lord desires for us, as we grow in relationship with him, to realize he will speak.
Yeah.
He will speak. We may want him to, talk all the time, or or not say certain things, but he will. How can you have a relationship with somebody who never talks to you?
Yeah.
How can you have a relationship with somebody, a true, honest, a living relationship with somebody who never talks to you? We have his written word, and he'll take verses and words and cause those to burn in our hearts. That's one of the ways, certainly, that he speaks. But I feel like it's just very vital for
Yeah.
businessmen to know.
Absolutely.
Coming into a complex, what is the answer to this personnel issue or
Mhm.
this vision opportunity? Lord, I need to hear you.
Yeah. I think it even goes back to Pastor what we were talking about earlier. One of the things that I was feeling like, I'm like, God, you like me. You actually like me. You actually want to be my
Mhm.
friend. And I think it
Yeah.
goes back to that. Like, no, God actually cares about the businessman. God actually cares about the guy who's doing a landscaping. Like, he wants to give us heavenly strategies if we would just stop and listen and ask. Um, I love how we were talking about the voice of the Lord and hearing the voice of the Lord, because I was reminded about something the Lord spoke to me as I was talking to our oldest daughter. And it was the statement was, anything that the Lord asks us to do, he will always give us the enabling power to do it. He never
Yeah.
asks us to do something for us to do it in our own power of powering up and like, I'm just going to do the thing that the
Right.
Lord is asking us to
Right.
do, but he's always going to empower us by his Holy Spirit. I think having those conversations, having that relationship with the Lord where we are in conversation, that we are building relationship with him, is so important, because that's how we know his love for us. And even more, we know that he loves us because he sent his son, but also he reiterates it every day with the way he continues to show up in relationship.
Mhm. And provision,
Yeah.
the health that we can take for granted, that we recognize that it is a gift from him, something we have to have when something causes us to be infirmed or to be weakened or to be injured. Excuse me.
I'll jump in on that too.
Yeah. Those places, I think, are very strategic in your and Tina's testimony to the church. Your words to be able to speak and encourage folks that when it makes no sense to leave San Antonio, where you're paid, familiar streets, familiar HEB, and then it's Austin, and yet, as you follow him, you sense his presence, even though all the questions haven't been answered. You don't
Yeah.
know what your street address is going to be as you do it. I think that what you said is is really important. That these smaller steps, or these earlier steps that are confirmed by the Lord's provision, by the sense of his presence, open doors, so forth, things that he already had in place that we didn't know
Yeah.
until we would step in. That causes it to be somewhat easier when the further steps come. Our flesh is always going to be the flesh. The flesh is always going to say, how do you know? Are you crazy? What's going on? The flesh will always be the flesh, but the Spirit of Jesus in us, I believe, really works to have more and more broader control in our emotions and in our wills as we have followed him before. He said, this is just another step, just like before, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
There be somebody, some folks listening to us today, and they're really that thing of, I want to do what the Lord wants me to do.
Yeah.
I just need to hear what it is that he wants me to do. What
Yeah.
would you say to somebody like that? I need to hear. I want to hear. I want to obey. How do I how do I prepare myself to hear the voice from the Lord, hear a word from the Lord?
That is a great question. The first thing that jumps up into my mind, the biggest prayer I pray to the Lord is just one word: help.
Yeah,
Lord, help me. Help me to hear you. Help me to trust you. Help me.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I think that's a solid and broad enough answer to that question. It's that it's the continual place
yeah,
of looking to Him, and just what to say help means.
yeah,
I know I can't do this myself. I want to know more than what my brain can figure out.
yeah.
What people might say to me, help me with that sense, and it can be in different ways for different folks. But that's I think that's the posture. That's the place.
Mm.
Help me.
Well, and I think it's Isaiah 41. I might be wrong on the location, but it's in Isaiah. I think the Lord Isaiah said, and he's speaking the word of the Lord to Israel, and he says like, "Oh Jacob, though you feel like a grub worm, I'm going to help you."
Mm.
And it goes along throughout the verse. He's like, "I will help you. I will help you." And those are moments that I go back to in my own personal life when the enemy comes in and says, did God really tell you this? He says the same lie. Um, so for everyone that's going through it, is God really faithful? The enemy's always going to question God's faithfulness. He's always going to question God's, if I can trust in him. He's always going to question that. And he's always going to question those things where the Lord has called us, and he's always going to try to cause us to lose heart and lose faith in the Lord. And so in those moments for me, even though I feel discouraged or feel like, God, can I trust you? Or for me personally, with our daughter, we have a daughter that's special needs, and we've had so many reports that her head wouldn't grow, she wouldn't walk, she wouldn't be able to do certain things, and we've seen the Lord do miracles in her, but at the same time, there's that I haven't seen her completely healed. And so the enemy loves to come in and say, is God really doing a work in her life? Is God really healing her? She's not normal. And it's in those moments where I say, God, help me to trust you. Help me to trust you're good and you're faithful. And it's in those moments that I have to go back to my history of what the Lord has spoken to me, just not just in his word, but also into my heart in prayer, in our relationship with him. And so having that history is important. But I guess for people who are just starting out, just starting to walk with the Lord, is take time, pull away, maybe put on some instrumental worship and just be silent. Maybe open up the word and just say, God, speak to me.
You know what's really encouraging too is Gideon. You know,
Yeah.
the Lord finds him in the hole in the ground where, scared out of his mind and trying to hide from the Amalekites, because they were marauding at the time of harvest and stealing the Israelite stuff. And then the Lord shows up and says, "Hail, you valiant warrior," and it's like, Gideon would, who are you talking
Yeah.
to? And even though the Lord spoke to him and gave him the promise, you will lead Israel into a measure of freedom, the Lord let him test him.
Yeah.
If this is really you, let this side be wet. And if that one once wasn't enough, and you can read that in Judges chapter 6 and so forth. So it's a fascinating story that the Lord knows how to convince us.
Yeah.
And it may not be all in one fell swoop. It may be as some time passes, and that sense doesn't go away in your heart that he said Austin,
Yeah.
or it was Tampa, or
Yeah.
it was that there was time that passed. That wasn't just one moment when the light turned on and that was, and y'all packed up.
Yeah.
There was a passage of time. The Lord knows what He's working with when He's working with us. When He's got us.
Man, yeah. I really identify with Gideon.
Yeah.
And the kindness of the Lord in that story. He's so kind. He's so kind. And like I love him. I love that he wants our honesty. I love that he wants us with unveiled hearts to have that kind of relationship with him. Like he can take it. He can take our fear. He can take when we're uncertain. He can take it.
Jeremiah says, I'm ready to quit. David says, I've had it. Whew. I'm done. Stick a fork in me. I'm done. And yet still the call of the Lord on their lives, the holding up of the Lord of their lives when they wanted to go another direction. I fall back on that often, and grateful for the mercy, the patience, where Job would say, no purpose of yours, Lord, will be thwarted. Even with all that Job would have gone through, and the opposite. This is what he comes with. There is no purpose of the Lord that will be thwarted. Ultimately, what God wants in a life is what He's going to bring forth, and that's our rest. That's our hope.
Yeah.
We need to talk further. Let's do this again.
I'd love that.
Okay, and folks, you are welcome. We'd love to have you join us for any and all of our worship services here at Alamo City. Micah is our worship pastor. He leads with anointing. He leads with heart, and you will be blessed, I think, to join with us and in some times of worship on any of our Sundays or Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
And thank you, Micah.
Thank you, Pastor,
for being a part of us.
Thank you for asking. This was so much fun.
Yeah, we'll have to do some more of this. Folks, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. God bless you.